Hey, hey, hey. Happy Thursday. Come on in, pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, brought to you by, amazingly enough, thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. And even more amazingly enough, all month long, we are sponsored by Rolacrit, the home of the newly designed ultimate bag of holding. Yes, I'm going to call it the ultimate bag of holding right now. And we'll talk a little bit about Rolacrit in just a few moments. If you're not overly familiar with the show, let me point out, super casual. We just hang out talking about the latest in tabletop gaming news, and then I'll normally pontificate about some topic related to our hobby, which I will be tonight. In fact, I will be sharing some tips on how to make your NPC villains far more memorable in your role-playing games. So stay tuned for that. Of course, tonight is Thursday, August 22nd, 2024. This is live show 1090. Yowza. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit gaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. And just a second, for some strange reason, my nose was itching like crazy. I was like, cut it out. Get off me! Get off me! No, it wasn't a little cat hair or anything like that. It was just, strangely enough, the side of my nose was itching. Weird. Very weird. Of course, because this is a live show, there is chat available. It's not on screen. We're the waiters at Bay. Plus, you have to be subscribers to the channel for at least 10 minutes. That's another way I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. But if you want to say howdy, got a question, a comment, by all means, fire away. I will do my best to respond. I'm going to take a guess that tonight chat will probably be a little quieter than normal because this is the big night at the Democratic National Convention here in the Chicago. Well, it's in Chicago. I'm in the Chicago area. So I wouldn't be too surprised if maybe we have fewer folks hanging around in chat tonight, which is cool. I mean, that's how it goes. Plus, it's not like a controversial topic or anything like that tonight, which it's not D&D related, so that usually brings in a few, gawkers, few drive-bys. Speaking of chat, first out the gate tonight is Semper Buffo, James Venabush, Tessie Trekkie, Gleam One RX, Red Dice Diaries, and Vorpal Bite are all with us tonight. And I'll take a wild guess that the lovely and talented Miss Sarah D might be lurking in the shadows with her glittery banhammer, making sure that everyone just, behaves themselves. Kathy Evans is with us too. So as I mentioned, this month's sponsor is Rolacrit, the home of the newly redesigned ultimate bag of holding. It is also the home of the upcoming Kickstarter for their Heroes of Barcadia, which I have reviewed. If you are curious about it, we had a good time. The expansion for it is Heroes for Hire. Heroes from across the lands gather in Barcadia for a grand drinking competition. as you may remember. But the festivities turn dire when the Grand Drink Guardians monsters steal all the drinks. Damn you, alcoholic monsters! 8 valiant heroes step up only to be thwarted by the die of Barcane Chaos. The heroes face an unexpected setback and retreat to the tavern, where they explain everything to Brutus Pint Smasher, the event organizer. Damn, I shouldn't have done that voice. Should have done that damn you alcoholic monsters. Kind of tweaked my voice there for a minute. Blah! Brutus sends off letters to distant lands for help, and his plea is answered by 4 valiant heroes, the heroes for hire. With rewards aplenty should they succeed, they venture into the dungeon. Their trials surpass even those of the original heroes. But will they be triumphant? That's for you to decide. Outmaneuver your opponents to become the ultimate hero in this thrilling adventure, coming soon to Kickstarter. Now, be sure to sign up over at Roll a Crit to be notified of the launch for Heroes for Hire, because if you do that and you back the Kickstarter, you are going to receive an exclusive power-up. So don't miss out on that. Sarah D is with us tonight, says their internet connection isn't so sure about that, though. Yeah, last night we hit some issues. I did some poking around after the show ended. It was not on my end. It was all YouTube, folks. So don't know what to tell you about that. We have been seeing some problems. In fact, you know what? We're seeing problems right now. We are seeing issues right now. We're dropping about half of our frames. So let's go change our output settings here and drop this down in quality, sadly enough. See if that helps us out a bit. Yeah, because it's looking like, we're dropping frames all over the place. It's ridiculous. All right, just to check, I'm going to do another dropped packet test, which only takes a few seconds here. See what's going on. I think a lot of people have been experiencing some pretty shoddy internet connections as of late. So I know ours has been okay. Not on this end, kids. Everything is A-okay. There is absolutely zero packet loss, late packets, uploaded and downloaded packets, zero. It is a YouTube issue, gang. Sorry about that. Maybe next week what I'll look to do is I will look to swap to the other streaming server, because there's only 2 that you can connect to with YouTube. But yeah, this is just something that we seem to be getting on a daily basis. And thankfully, it's not through the whole show, but it's through enough of the show. Usually not right at the beginning, though. We usually hit it about the hour mark of the show. I'm just going to take another quick look here. It looks as if our drop frames are kind of locked at a certain number, and that is it. And our percentage is dropping as the stream continues. So it looks as if the change in the quality of the stream might be helping out. Hell, it's not like I've got a mug here that you really need to be able to see in, high definition. Most definitely. So Kevin King, Lenny Blade, as well as Flaming Huron are with us in chat. Flaming Huron happens to be another of our chat moderators. Folks are saying in chat, yeah, seems to be okay right now. I guess what I'll do is I'll try to just stream at this kilobit per second level next week. We'll see how that turns out. Yes, Flaming Heron says it is all good now because they're here. Oh, Flaming Heron's modesty is so well established. So let's jump on into the news. Because now available in hardcover is the Marvel Multiverse role-playing game X-Men Expansion from Marvel Comics. Here's the skinny, or I guess I could say just Marvel. The Marvel Multiverse role-playing game's first full-size source book is here, focusing on the uncanny X-Men. To me, my X-Men. This, the first full-size source book for the Marvel Multiverse role-playing game, features the X-Men and all their various spin-off teams, greatest allies, and most fearsome foes. Written by D616 System co-creator and New York Times bestseller Matt Forbeck, and packed with illustrations by Marvel's incredible array of artists, the X-Men expansion is jammed full of vital information about Marvel's most popular mutants, including new options for creating characters, new traits, new tags, and new powers. It also includes new profiles for dozens of characters from X-Force, New Mutants, and Marauders, new full-color maps of famous X-Men homes, including the Xavier Institute, Krakoa, and Arakko, and plenty of plot hooks for an entire campaign. Answer the call and join the X-Men. This 256-page hardcover is available now. Carries an MSRP of $49.99. I am curious how the final product of the Marvel Multiverse role-playing game came out. Because, in my opinion, the playtest, and I did a review, I thought it was kind of a mess. A lot of typos, a lot of errors, not exactly the greatest mechanical system. In fact, it seemed to be way too focused on just combat, which I understand. It's a superhero role-playing game. I know that. But the biggest selling point for Marvel, what set them apart from DC back when, it was Make Mine Marvel in the 60s into the 70s and further on, especially, you had the mid-70s with the X-Men taking off with Chris Claremont. You're kind of looking at things outside of just the fighting, the personalities, the relationships that the characters have to each other and with their communities, such as Spider-Man and New York City and J. Jonah Jameson and the Daily Bugle. Those are what set those comics apart. And at least in the playtest, that kind of stuff was really getting the short shift. So I'm wondering if that was changed in the final product. Because, the playtest was about 100 pages long. It wasn't that much. Lord Chaos 2000 is with us, as is Adam Knight. So Vorpal Bite is asking, what's our favorite superhero role-playing game? I would say probably, it's been a long time, I will say. I always had a soft spot for villains and vigilantes. I think that was the first superhero role-playing game we picked up. That was in high school. And that was when it first came out. And I got to say, I think it would be villains and vigilantes. But I will point out, I have not checked out many superhero role-playing games. Adam Knight points out Prowlers and Paragons. I have heard good things about that. I've heard quite a few good things about that. Champions is fine. The hero system I find to be a little, I don't want to say crunchy because it's not necessarily crunchy. It's people complain about Pathfinder having a lot of math. I think the hero system's got a good deal of math involved as well. Flaming Heron says, for them, it's Marvel superheroes role-playing, but I know Jeff won't agree. I can't say really anything about that. I remember the first one that came out, because there were like two that came out from TSR. One was super, super lightweight. That I did not care for. But then the follow-up to that was sort of like, an advanced Marvel superheroes is what everybody calls phase rip. So I have always heard really good things about phase rip. I've never played it. I've never run it either. I like comics. I like superheroes. In fact, it's funny. I got my brother back into comic book collecting about 15 years ago. And then I was only collecting again for maybe a couple of years. And then I said, okay, bye again. So yes, Vorpal Bites his champions way too much math, and it's very, very slow. And one thing a superhero role-playing game should not be is slow. Kathy Evans says their group enjoys Prowlers and Paragons too. I will have to maybe take a peek. Maybe I'll reach out. I'm not sure who publishes that. Maybe I'll reach out and say, hey, you know what? We're kind of looking to do some comic book role-playing game coverage. See if they might be interested. There we go. An unusual commenter has arrived. Hey, we've got safeguards in place to keep you out. Oh, welcome aboard. Vorpal Bite asks, who's my favorite comic book superhero? Captain America. Since I was a little kid, he's been my favorite superhero. I'm not a fan of Iron Man. I've never been. I mean, the character's fine, but no, it's Cap. It's Cap all the way. Like during Civil War, it was Team Cap. I mean, it had to be Team Cap. I mean, come on. All right. So yes, unusual commenter says, no keeping me at bay. There we go. All right, let's move on because there are a trio of new Pathfinder releases which are arriving next week. Here's the scoop from Paizo Inc. We're going to start off with the Pathfinder Flip Mat Marsh. Put on your boots. There are times when your adventures bring you into sodden locales and marshy expanses, and Pathfinder Flip Mat Marsh can help you set the scene. Dangers lurk amid tall grasses and deep silt, ready to spring on hapless adventurers. Don't waste time drawing a marsh when this flip mat lets you play out your soggy encounters in style. The Pathfinder Flip Mat Marsh measures 24 inches by 30 inches, unfolded, and of course, it's got a coated surface which can handle any dry erase, wet erase, or even permanent marker. This is going to carry an MSRP of $19.99, or you can grab just the PDF for $9.99. Then we've got the Pathfinder Lost Omens TNG character guide, Countless Peoples, Countless Techniques. The boundless continent of TNG features innumerable peoples, each with their own rich history and practices. Bring your character to life with this 136-page guidebook crammed full of everything a player might need to build a hero, hailing from or journeying through these vast lands, including 6 new ancestries, including the reincarnating Samsaran, trickster Tanukai, and shadowy Wei-Yang, as well as TN-inspired additional feats and heritages for existing ancestries, like the Peach Child Leshy, Bakua Lizardfolk, and Gandharva Sprite. Feats inspired by Tianjia's diverse arts and practices, from new elemental medicine to alchemically fortified cuisine to how the Zodiac can guide your character's path. Spectacular magical and martial techniques to vanquish the toughest opponents, whether that's through weightless sword axe or by borrowing the ancient power of magical familiars. Dazzling new magic items and weapons to forge or find, from the subtle Kododama whistle to legendary artifacts like the Staff of Sun Wukong. The 136-page hardcover will carry an MSRP of $47.49. That's kind of an oddball MSRP, to be honest. You go grab the PDF for $29.99. And then finally, we've got the Pathfinder Adventure Path number 205, Singer, Stalker, Skinsaw Man, which is part 2 of the 3-part Curtain Call Adventure Path. Production has begun on a brand new opera that promises to bring your group's heroic adventures to the stage. But as it turns out, producing an opera can be as complex and even at times as dangerous as adventuring ever is, particularly when a mysterious stalker spreads mayhem. Can you keep your production on schedule and under budget in the face of nefarious sabotage and sinister agendas? Singer Stalker Skinsaw Man is a Pathfinder adventure for 4 14th level characters. This adventure continues the Curtain Call Adventure Path, a 3-part monthly campaign in which a group of adventurers help to produce an opera based on their own prior adventures, while simultaneously facing a new threat that only the most powerful of heroes can stop. This adventure also includes an article about Arshia, the demigod of freedom and beauty, several new theatrically themed spells and magic items, and 4 manipulative and unsettling new monsters. This will carry an MSRP of $29.99. You'll be able to grab the PDF for $19.99. All of these are slated to arrive on August 28th. I will point out, I have already received them. So stay tuned, because I will have part 2 of the Paizo preview for August, because you might remember that August 1st brought a bunch of Paizo Inc. products for both Pathfinder and Starfinder. So this is kind of part 2 of the August releases. So I will be sharing a first look at those maybe tomorrow, Saturday at the latest. On to our next news piece. September is going to bring the Solasta campaign rulebook for 5th edition from Tactical Adventures and Modiphius Entertainment. Here's what I know. 1,000 years have passed since the cataclysm. The Manakalan Empire has been all but forgotten. Many seek the lost secrets that lie at the heart of its ruins. Powerful magic wielded only by the ancient masters of old. But now evil forces seek to harness this power unless brave heroes stand to unite against them. Roll for initiative and discover the shattered world of Solasta with the Solasta Campaign Rulebook. This revised edition presents the full majesty and depth of the popular 5e-based Solasta Crown of the Magister computer game and includes all of its unique archetypes for the first time. Explore ruins and dungeons for legendary treasures, learn the truth of the cataclysm that broke the world, and stop it all from happening again. You make the choices, dice decide your destiny. The 196-page full-color hardcover Solasta Campaign Rulebook features the complete history of the world and a breakdown of its major religions. The first ever realm-by-realm guide to the continent of Farendrach, and an in-depth examination of the city of Ser Sylvan and the Badlands. I don't know. I'm just guessing. I'm just guessing at these pronunciations. Full rules for Celeste's playable species and over 40 new subclasses, including the Path of Stone Barbarian, Swift Blade Ranger, and Court Mage Wizard. A bestiary of deadly foes, including the cunning Sor Akath. I have a cunning plan, me lord. Dread Defilers, and more. All rules content is designed for the 5th edition of the world's most popular role-playing game. The 196-page hardcover with PDF is going to carry an MSRP of $44.99 when it arrives next month. I tried this RPG, and funny enough, I checked it out. I picked it up. I started checking it out, and unfortunately, it was right as Baldur's Gate 3 was coming out. So, wonder what happened there. I thought it was fairly interesting. The reality of it is now, and I understand Graham Davis, who does a lot of WIFRIP work, was one of the writers on this. But I don't know. I didn't get real far into it, but it was sort of, oh, okay, a little bit same old story-wise. But graphically pretty solid. I really like the fact that various different elevations really came into play as far as combat and stuff. Not too bad. Not too bad. Alrighty. So Flaming Heron says, didn't even know this was a thing outside the computer role-playing game. Yes. In fact, I think there was originally and already. Let's just throw those two words together, Jeff. Ay. There was already a book out. This is like the revised edition of it, which I had no idea about. But looks kind of interesting. And of course, if you run 5e, might be interested in picking up some new archetypes and things like that. Tony Urquides is with us in chat. Good to see you, Tony. Moving right along, following extended delays. And when I say extended delays, I mean extended delays. Upon a completion of a successful Kickstarter, the massive Heliana's Guide to Monster Hunting for 5e is arriving. It is hitting in October, and I've got the latest from Loot Tavern. The 600-page standard hardback source book of Heliana's Guide to Monster Hunting that totally doesn't double as a weapon in a pinch. This actually includes a PDF and digital extras like monster hunting, love crafting, or love crafting, which I do. That's why I run Call of Cthulhu. But I think they mean love crafting. Then pack your grill of barbecuing, because this is the 5th edition supplement for you. Huntmaster, inspirational speaker, and badass barbecuer, Heliana has compiled a catalog of creatures that need slaying. These unique twists on classic monsters are divided into 11 easy-to-run monster hunt adventures, each playable at a variety of levels. Investigate the creatures to find their weaknesses. Prepare your play and plan of attack. Then unleash your fury with brand new weapons, spells, and player options. This supplement brings a horde of new content to your 5e game. There are rules for harvesting fallen foes, a system for crafting items using harvested monster components, a rule set for tracking, and over 150 random encounters, over 100 illustrated magic items, 75 new creatures, 69 sizzling spells, 14 gorgeous maps, 11 engaging monster hunt adventures, 10 flavorful races, 9 new subclasses for your standard classes, as well as a new class, the Monster Tamer, and 4 subclasses. There's even a rule set for cooking and over 20,000 unique combinations of effects. You heard that right. Over 20,000. The 600-page hardcover with PDF carries an MSRP of $79.95. You'll be able to grab just the PDF for $34.99. Maybe I'm off on one of those. One of those might be $79.99, or the PDF might be $34.95. It's 4 cents. Now, the hardcover is going to arrive in October. And I got to say that there are a lot of folks who have waited quite a while for this to come out. Now, as far as I do understand, the Kickstarter has been fulfilled. So everyone who backed the Kickstarter has received their books and digital products and things along those lines. So now that is why this is going to be arriving in stores and online retailers. And of course, you can order it from Loot Tavern as well. And it'll arrive in October. Kind of cool. 600 pages, folks. Well, the binding on that book better be good. It better be really good. 600 pages, a lot of pages to put in a hardcover gaming book. There are also a lot of virtual tabletop items that are included with this too. So if you order the hardcover and you get the PDF, there are also VTT elements that you get too, not just a PDF. Chris Lundgren's with us today. Very cool. Chris says they're reading that everyone's freaking out about D&D Beyond no longer supporting the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons after September. Yes, well. Just like I thought it was funny, N-World very recently, I mean, within the past couple of days, I think, posted an article, and the article basically says, I think it's even the title, something along the lines of, make no mistake, this is a new edition. Yeah. So Chris says only 5.5. We're not allowed to call it that. For shame. Only Dungeons & Dragons 2024 character creation, etc. Yeah. Flaming Heron says they stopped using D&D Beyond anyway. Yeah, you know what? I don't think Wizards of the Coast has done all that well changing focus to D&D Beyond. I don't use it. I never have. I say it all the time. People get mad at me. I don't run 5e. It's not my role-playing game of choice. It's not my fantasy role-playing game of choice. And then I have people get upset because I have the audacity to review Dungeons & Dragons releases. It's like, how can you review it? You don't run it. I don't know. I've only been playing role-playing games for over 40 fucking years. Maybe that's got something to do with it. Yeah, I know. Some people are just ridiculous. Glimwin RX says, admittedly, the D&D Beyond iPad app is handy and useful. I wish WotC would stop revising and censoring the game materials. Yeah. Mike is with us in chats. Make it sound like some Windows upgrade. Eventually, you're just forced to do it. Yes. We could chat a little bit about this in a few moments. But let's wrap up with the final news piece, because available in PDF for the Mothership role-playing game is The Hunger in Achernar. And I've got the deets from Galaxy Gamut Games. Say that 5 times fast. Actually, I don't think it would be that difficult. Step into the void-haunted halls of a cursed derelict in this thrilling Mothership science fiction horror role-playing game adventure. In The Hunger in Achernar, the investigators uncovered the mystery of the missing CF Sinespera and its experimental hyperdrive. Oh, experimental hyperdrives are never a good thing. Never. Drifting near the dying star Achernar, the Sinespera is filled with mutated horrors twisted by waves of unreality. Spoilers. As cracks in the universe spread, players must navigate the darkness, survive the horrors, and confront a lurking cosmic threat to save the galaxy or die trying. This 16-page full-color adventure zine is perfect for a one-shot for slotting into an ongoing Mothership campaign. It features professional table-ready layouts, unique locations, scheming NPCs, yes, and terrifying encounters to haunt your players. It features derelict ship exploration, detailed maps, and eerie locations filled with haunting mysteries, twisted experiments, and deadly traps. Intriguing NPCs, mutated survivors, enigmatic scientists, and sinister cultists with hidden agendas. Cosmic horror. Unveil dark secrets and confront the spreading corruption threatening the galaxy. Professional art and design. Immersive visuals by Vil and expert layout by Gantillo brings the entire eerie atmosphere of the CF Sinespera to life. Can your crew survive the horrors and save the galaxy from the cosmic taint of Achernar? Find out in The Hunger in Achernar. The 16-page PDF is available over at DriveThruRPG for $7.99. I will admit, as interesting as this looks and as well presented as this looks, I think $8 for a 16-page PDF is pricey. Bit pricey there, folks. Typical DM has popped into chat. Good to see you. So, some cool Mothership stuff. Yes, yes. Remember, I just recently reviewed Mothership, the core box. Really liked it. Liked it a lot. Very nice. And I got to be honest, it was pretty well packed with role-playing game goodness. No doubt about that. All right, that is it for the news tonight. Of course, I was just talking about DriveThruRPG. Don't forget, the Gaming Gang, thus the Dispatch, is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you are going to visit, say, DriveThruRPG, Storyteller's Vault, Dungeon Masters Guild, Wargame Vault, what have you, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. Click on one of our banners. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get 5% of that sale. And all those nickels, dimes, and quarters really do add up and help keep thegaminggang.com around. Also, if you like the video, if you dig the channel, if you find thegaminggang.com to be a valuable resource, hell, if you just like what we do, you can always stop on by paypal.me/thegaminggang to make a small donation. Hell, you can buy me a 2-liter bottle of soda. Trying to get rid of that scratch out of my throat. After I did that, damn you, I was like, kind of like, Get a little raspy. I'm like, what's going on? And thank you to everybody who uses those banner ads and or visits paypal.me/the gaming gang. And there are some folks out there who make not small donations, such as our good friend, the Madman, Agile Monk, Joshua Edwards, and others. Big tip of the cap. Thank you very kindly. So let's see. Ian Nicholson is with us. Says, though I have not commented or chatted lately, you seem to be doing some damn good work. Sir, have you been drinking? It's like, I don't know about that. Have no idea what it means. Maybe a tad with best wishes. So he throws out some French at us. Thanks a lot. I took 1 year of French in high school. Disliked it intensely. What was I thinking? It's a romantic language. All right, dummy. It's like, nice going. Peaceful Porcupine is also with us in chat. Adam Knight says, it's only right if it's diet right. There you go. Anyway. Yeah, yes. I had kind of heard that through the grapevine as far as D&D Beyond was not going to support 5e after a certain point. I did not realize it was next month. So does that mean a piece of glitter on the microphone? It's gold. Does that mean that once the player's handbook hits stores, that's the cutoff? I wonder. But, once again, people are going to be upset. But the thing is, we talked about this last night. They're focused on this not new edition of Dungeons and Dragons. So they're going to pull people along kicking and screaming if they have to. That's just how it's going to be. That's like when people complain about, I can't believe Microsoft's no longer going to support this Windows version that's 12 years old. It's like, yeah, it's 12 fucking years old. What do you expect them to do? Support it forever? It's like the vast majority of people out there are not running computers that old. And even if they are running computers that old, they're not running that operating system. They're operating at least the next, next iteration of it. So, but then, you see it all the time too. It's like, gnashing of teeth. It is what it is. I know people hate that term, and I'm not real keen on that phrase too. But that's what it kind of boils down to is, what did people expect? Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro want to make money. This is what they're going to do. We already know we've got the microtransactions all lining up. Talked a little bit about that last night. Talked about that last night. So it doesn't shock me. It just really does not shock me at all. And I see it's well within their right. I mean, it is well within their right. And I am not trying to stick up for Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro by any stretch of the imagination. You know that. I am critical of them when I feel, they need to be called onto the carpet. So Chris Lundgren says the article from them, it's their announcement, says you'll still be able to create very basic characters, but if you use spells and feats and want to use them, then you have to update to the new books. So in essence, you got to update to the new books. It's the reality of it. Yes. Well, I don't know. We talk about it all the time. Maybe I'll do a topic next week. And once again, we will talk about great fantasy role-playing games that are not Dungeons and Dragons. Remember, I've got the one video that actually brought in a lot of views during the open game license fiasco. And well, how many did I have? 29? I think I ended up with like 29 fantasy role-playing games. We won't go into that kind of detail. Maybe we'll do 10. 10 excellent fantasy role-playing games, which are not Dungeons and Dragons. Because we talked about it before. If you're upset about the direction that Dungeons and Dragons has gone in, and there's a variety of different reasons why you might be upset. You might not like the feeling that it's all about money now, and it's really not about the game. Or politically, you don't like the direction it's gone in. Artistically, you don't like the way the game has gone. All these different things. There are loads and loads of just amazing fantasy role-playing games out there that you can step on into. I think one of the reasons why it's such a big deal is because a lot of people out there, role-playing to them is Dungeons and Dragons. That's it. So there are even people who they'll say, oh, we're going to go play Dungeons and Dragons, but they're not even playing Dungeons and Dragons. They're playing something else. But it's just so ingrained into them that all role-playing is D&D. So a lot of times there are some exceptional fantasy role-playing games out there that can easily replace Dungeons and Dragons at your game table that people don't even think of. They think, oh, well, it's Dungeons and Dragons. I buy my role-playing games at Walmart. Well, at Walmart, all you're going to find is Dungeons and Dragons. You're not going to find anything else. You'll find other board games, but you're not going to find other role-playing games. So Peaceful Porcupine says, this is why I left the D&D system years ago. I don't blame people for staying, but it's not for me. I don't want to spend the money or training time needed to keep up to date. You're not signing up for those training classes. Why not? Chris Lundgren says, what if you want to use the 2014 version of a spell or a magic item? Well, according to what you're saying, Chris, it's you're shit out of luck. That's what happens. Peaceful Porcupine says, it's like the settings. People put more and more obscure canon stuff in from novels and such. Until I miss something, they try to invoke it, then shout at me because I don't know it. What are you talking about? Warhammer 40K? Hey, speaking of Warhammer, I do have 3 people who do want to play Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. I'm probably looking to get maybe 2 more people. And the reason why I mentioned that before, because I have pointed out, my best friend Elliot Miller is going to be playing, but even every other Monday, there is no guarantee that he's gonna be there. And I was thinking of maybe having my nephew Cameron play, but his schedule changes from time to time. So currently he has Mondays off. A month from now, could be something completely different. So there you go. Vorpal Bite says in 1974, Dungeons & Dragons challenged the player. In 2024, D&D challenges your character sheet. Huge difference. We talk about that a lot around here, that one of the reasons why I like the old school, and it doesn't even have to be old school, it can be new school, is where it is player smarts, player ingenuity that powers the game. It is not looking at the character sheet to say, so what am I going to use here? So, little talk about Swords and Wizardry, Dungeon Crawl Classics. I know someone had mentioned Castles and Crusades. If you were watching last night, I showed you that I got a slew of Castles and Crusades stuff from Troll Lord Games. We'll be taking a look at very shortly. So we've got that. So the reality is, the way I kind of look at it with Dungeons and Dragons now, and I say it all the time, I wish them all the success. I want Dungeons and Dragons to be successful. I also don't want Dungeons and Dragons to be the powers that be sitting there saying, well, you know what? We don't want people like you around here, Jeff. And I know people are like, oh, well, that's not what that guy meant. It's not what Kyle Brink meant. It is what Kyle Brink meant. The words came out of his mouth. It's what he meant. Just because he backpedaled later on doesn't change anything. But I've got nothing against Wizards of the Coast. It's they mainly have the beef with me because I believe in telling you what I think of stuff, even if I don't think much of it, right? But for the people out there, I think I'm going to put my foot down here. For people out there who whinge and complain about Dungeons and Dragons, I pointed this out multiple times before. The vast majority of people out there who complain about D&D don't even play 5e Dungeons and Dragons. They don't own the books, anything like that. But the thing is, if you're going to sit there and whine and complain about Dungeons and Dragons, don't. Because you have so many other fantastic options out there. The only person to blame is yourself. If you want to sit there and be all bent out of shape about whatever's going on with Dungeons and Dragons, well, that's your problem. Because there are so many other fantasy role-playing games out there that are just awesome, that are just spectacular. And you're going to be hung up about a game that, for the most part, the vast majority of the folks bitching about don't own or play anyway. So there you go. So there, I put my foot down. So Stephen from Roll for Combat is popped into chat with us. Said they just sent me 2 boxes of books. Oh, so I see Stephen's trying to outdo Troll Lord Games. I see how it is. A little one-upsmanship. Hey, keep in mind, everybody, I do have the review of Jewel of the Indigo Isles. It is plural, right? Yes. From Roll for Combat. You'll be able to see that next week. So that is on the slate. Very nice, very nice. All right, so anyway, so our topic tonight is not Dungeons and Dragons. No, that's right. Our topic tonight is creating memorable NPC villains for your role-playing games. And we're actually going to talk about that right after a brief intermission.
It's intermission time, folks. Time out for a delicious snack in our sparkling refreshment building. Every item a fresh, appetizing taste treat.
Want a lifesaver?
Yes.
Anyone say no to a lifesaver?
No!
Oh, heck, my flying saucer's out of atomic fuel.
I'm even worse off. I'm out of Wilkins coffee.
A tidal wave of terror engulfs the screen as a raging monster from the dawn of creation attacks the world of man.
Here, gentlemen. Navy submarine.
Or just one of enormous size, Mr. Chase.
I see they picked an Atom sub to go out and fight this thing. Why is that, Commander?
Could be because of the new electronic equipment, or her speed.
Was she ordered back here from Hawaii just for that?
That's right. Think it's as bad as that, do you? I think we're lucky she's here.
The H-bomb blasted it loose from the depths of the Pacific. But not even the H-bomb can kill it.
Unknown object coming this way. Entering minefield. Stand by, number 38, mine.
Fire!
Go up. Ready, number 12, south.
Fire!
Coming on through.
That's the end of our first line of defense, Miss Joyce.
Then the red alert.
West Coast reels under Holocaust as the men and weapons of the atomic age battle to the death against the ageless monster of the deep.
It's Ray Harryhausen versus San Francisco. It's actually a pretty decent movie because it's Columbia Pictures. So they actually did sink a little bit of cash into that. Although, of course, all that stop motion animation, pretty obvious now. So, Gleeman RX says, Octzilla. Yes. All righty. So tonight's topic is creating memorable NPC villains for your role-playing games. And I am going to share 10 tips on how you can really make your villain stand out. Because one thing that we do see in a lot of role-playing games, or at least I hear from players, is that their game masters or dungeon masters don't really make the NPCs memorable, and especially the villains. So let's talk about a few different tricks that you can pull or tips that you can try in order to make them stand out. And first of all, I would say that make sure your main villain puts the hero or heroes in the role of the underdog. Villains who are easily defeated are boring. And villains that always fail at everything they do, the heroes are able to foil their attempts every time, just sucks the oxygen out of a game. So one of the first things I always recommend is that make sure when you compare the heroes to the villain, that the heroes are always going to be the underdogs. Also, make your villains identifiable. So sprinkle some common traits that you would find in people into your villain. Now, of course, if your big bad is a, red dragon, well, okay. But there are still some aspects, some attributes that you can use that are recognizable for your players. And some of the best villains are the sorts of villains that your players can see themselves in. So that is certainly something very important. A lot of times, give your villains an admirable quality or two. Remember, the villains, for the most part, villains think they're the heroes of the story. Play them that way. The Badger has joined us in chat. Good to see you. So yeah, by all means, bring them a little down to earth. Something else I recommend is create a believable backstory for your villains. Now, once again, I'm one of these people, I talk about it all the time, that as far as like players go, like player characters, I don't really care about backstory. I don't want, as a game master, to have to sit there and custom tailor everything so I can squeeze every aspect of multiple players' backstories into the game I'm going to run. Plus, I'm always the sort of person who I like to see the characters' stories evolve through the game, not, what somebody concocted, during the evening last night of like the first 25 years of their character or whatever. So by all means, throw that out when it comes to your villains, because you want to have your villains with not only a believable backstory, but a backstory which is compelling. Now, you don't have to like info dump on your players about this villain's backstory, but have it in mind for yourself. So one thing that I always have felt is important for those out there who are going to be game masters is that you read a lot. It doesn't have to be role-playing game stuff, but you should be reading fiction. You should be reading anything. People don't read enough, period, but still. And one aspect of reading a lot is that you can see, especially if you're reading fiction, you can see character development, and you can also see how characters interact with antagonists. Not necessarily villains all the time, but you've got your protagonists, you got your antagonists. And if you read a lot, you get to pick up on certain beats that tend to be relatively traditional as far as how those main characters and background characters actually interact. So pretty interesting there. Chris Langren says that they believe write up a secret motive for your villain. Something else that I recommend is make your villains villainous. Don't pussy out on your villain, right? Unless I know there were some questions going on about, how dark of a bad guy should you make your villain if you're introducing kids to role-playing games. Well, yeah, I mean, come on. Let's not go overboard there. Thousands die in the streets like the trailer we just watched. I think we're going to stay away from that with the kids. But if you're running a game for, teenagers, adults, things like that, make the villain villainous. Make sure the collateral damage is high. Not only from the villain's actions, but from the player's failures. So that really helps drive home that, oh man, it's Duke Norris again. We hate that guy. Oh. Red Dice Diary says, make him darker than a cup of Wilkins coffee. David Wilkerson's with us in chat, says Dr. Destroyer in Champions, one of the best villains ever created. Nice. Gleam1 RX is asking, any particular book recommendations? I did a show not too long ago where I talked about book series that I thought would make really good role-playing games. And I am a huge fan of Joe Abercrombie. I think his fantasy books are really, really well done. And I think the audiobooks for them are just exceptionally good. But he writes really good combat scenes, and he takes a lot of fantasy tropes and kind of turns them on their heads, which I like as well. So it's not everybody's cup of tea. I will certainly say that. It is not your traditional like epic fantasy, although the storylines feel like they're going to be, but they tend to be pretty well centered on just a handful of characters and from their points of view as well. But anyway, like I said, keep the collateral damage high. And when your player characters fail, make those consequences hurt. Something else, and this kind of goes along with the backstory for your villain. Have a turning point in your mind when that villain started taking the path that they're on. Like, when did they turn down that dark path? And one thing that you can utilize if you use that information in the game and your players learn of this, try to make sure that it's something that could easily tempt the player characters as well. So try to make it where it's something that your heroes, your players could see their characters making those choices or that choice and following that same path. So that makes your villain far, far more impactful. Next, I would say make sure your villain takes advantage of your hero or hero's weakness or weaknesses. And your villain should push the heroes to the brink. That is what drives drama, excitement. That's where you end up. See, I'm real big on finishing up my game sessions on cliffhangers. In fact, a lot of times I try to plan what is the cliffhanger going to be, or at what point am I going to look to try to introduce a cliffhanger for us to wrap up that session. And having your heroes at the mercy of the villain, and the villain has taken advantage of the weaknesses that your heroes already know they possess, is an excellent way to wrap up on a cliffhanger. So that is something I always look for too. Semper Buffo says Strahd is a great villain. Yeah, I agree. I think so. Chris Lundgren says, so Jeff saying, you think for kids you can still make a good villain without being graphic? Yeah, sure you could. You can imply things. You don't have to come out and say things. Now, I'll be the first to say, I don't run role-playing games for kids. So I think the youngest player I've had is probably like 11 or 12. And that's, it's not a little kid. But, you can make a story as an example, that your villain is looking to poison the water supply. Now, you don't have to say that the poison is going to kill everybody, but you could make sure that your players understand that, the poison is going to make people really sick. and then just leave it at that. Now, if their minds want to take it to the point where it's like, oh, they're really sick, maybe they would die. Okay, well, you didn't say that. So I would say, something, things along those lines. Because the reality is, if you look at some of the best kids' movies throughout history, the best kids' movies don't treat the audience as children. So, great example, even though it was a flop when it came out, The Iron Giant, right? That's a kids' movie. It's an animated kids flick. It's a great flick, but that's got a serious message to it. So, yeah, some of the best, like I said, some of the best movies that were made for children don't, they don't get graphic and they don't get super dark, but they also don't treat their audience like little babies. It's like, 1001 Dalmatians. It's a classic movie, but it's not a classic movie because of its plot. One of the reasons why it's considered a classic is simply because it's a Disney film. It's an animated Disney film. Chris Leonard says, The Dark Crystal, would that fit? Yeah, I would think so. I think Labyrinth, another film, although it's been a long time since I've seen that. Yes, I would say something along those lines because, once again, it's dark, but it's not, you don't see David Bowie's goblins off murdering people or anything like that. But you know that they're up to no good. So, Badger says, Iron Giant is so underrated and overlooked. I don't think it's as underrated and overlooked as it was. Because I think a lot of people have seen it over the years and been like, wow, how did I miss this? So, anyway, so yes, I'm adjusting for inflation, calling it 1001 Dalmatians. Yeah, it's 101. I know. Cruella de Vil. So, Adam Knight says, I love Darkness from Legend. He was just looking for love and Endless Night. See, now, that is also something to use for your villains. Not always, but sometimes. You can make their beliefs to be misguided rather than just, out and out evil. Make them misguided. Make them feel like the player characters could turn them down the right path or the righteous path. I'm not saying you necessarily need to allow your players to be able to do that, but you can do that, where an effective villain, a memorable villain, does not have to always be twirling the mustache, everything, burn it all down, right? So you do have that. Or something else to keep in mind too is if you are looking to create a villain who is evil, put the pedal to the metal, lean into it. I think part of the problem you see, and you'll see this in a lot of published adventures too, that the big bad is kind of ho-hum. Yeah, okay. Yeah. It's yeah, okay. They're bad, but. And I completely agree that, you can have villains who are essentially thinking they're doing the right thing, like a Thanos, where they're just rabid extremists who think they are doing the right thing, but they certainly aren't. So, I mean, yeah, of course, you can have that. But then again, you can also take your villain, up to 11 if you'd like. Like I said, sometimes I see some of the published adventures, the villains are, sort of, yeah, okay. They're villains simply because the author is telling you they're the villain. A lot of times we see villains just show up at the end of an adventure. So something else I also want to point out, allow your villain to succeed on occasion from time to time. That helps keep that collateral damage high, helps keep the pressure on your players to defeat the villain. And like I said, a villain that, just gets defeated all the time isn't very interesting. They're very, very boring. I will also say, be sure to utilize your villain multiple times. Establish them as a recurring enemy. Make them a foil for the heroes. And it doesn't always have to be the sort of showdown conflict every time the heroes and the villain are in the same location. A great example of this you see in anime, where you'll have the big bad of the series showing up all the time, and many times the heroes are unable to actually take the villain on, depending on circumstances or where they're at or what have you. But the villain shows up enough times for you as a viewer to realize, yes, they're the big bad normally, 90% of the time. And that you should be like hissing and booing when they appear on screen. But it's like I said, I personally think it's important to establish a villain multiple times in your adventure. And don't be afraid to foreshadow as far as, what the villain might be up to, or that the villain might soon make an appearance. You don't necessarily have them just pop out like a jack in the box. So that's something I really, really strongly encourage is, and once again, it gets your players so that it's like, damn, it's them again. Arrgh. We got to do something about them. And I've had players do that. I've had players do that over just minor NPC baddies who just, pop up from time to time. And they'd be like, oh no, it's them again. And they weren't even the big bad. Finally, I also point out, and I already mentioned this previously, many times the villain believes they are the hero of their story. Lean into that. If that's the sort of villain you're going for, right? If you're just going for some dark force that wants to just bring death and destruction, well, no, they're not the hero of their own story. And you can have interesting villains who do realize that they are scum, right? And very, very dark and despicable characters. Sometimes it's kind of cool to have villains who realize that and just accept it. That is their nature. That is their nature, to be vile and evil. Sure, of course. But once again, a lot of times, try to keep in mind when you're utilizing a villain, and you don't even have to be making the villains up from scratch. You just be using a published adventure that's got a relatively interesting villain, and you can flesh them out more. Just like looking at just about any published role-playing game adventure, the various different set-piece encounters that are normally in an adventure, even sandbox adventures, you can easily replace the minions or whatever that the player characters encounter with just a quick encounter with the big bad. So, Vorpal Bite says, poor misunderstood Frankenstein's monster. Chris Lundgren says, Q in Star Trek would be neat as a reskin for fantasy role-playing games. He appears to just taunt them. Actually, I personally think he's in love with Picard. I think that's a part of it. I think that's part of why he shows up all the time. So, Adam Knight says, circling back to superhero games, Magneto is my favorite villain. You kind of want to root for him. And yes, in some situations, you do root for him. That kind of goes back to the whole theme of why Marvel Comics just started outselling DC Comics by a mile. Because you were, and granted, you know, looking at classic storylines from like Marvel Comics from the 60s and 70s and stuff. I mean, they are written, for the most part, aimed at 12-year-olds. I mean, that was kind of Marvel's thing. That's why Marvel didn't mind rehashing the same stories over and over again every 5 years or so, because they thought only 12-year-olds bought comic books and there would be the turnover, right? So once you turned like 15 or 16, you're like, I'm not reading comics. I know, it's kind of stupid because most of their readers were like in their 20s, but still. But it's because the characters and the villains had depth. Whereas you'd pick up a DC comic, and I mean, there are DC titles that I like. When I was still, I mean, I'll read comics here and there, but they're usually independents now. But, you know, I would read some DC stuff, especially Vertigo stuff. I read the hell out of Vertigo stuff about 10 years ago. But in the 60s and 70s, you'd pick up a DC comic, and there you go. Vorpal Bite says, Sergeant Rock was their favorite. And you'd have the cover, and the cover might be relatively interesting. I know, like in the 60s, Batman had this thing where he was always, him and Robin and the villain would be fighting on some giant-sized whatever, like the giant penny, stuff like that. You'd pick it up, the cover would have absolutely nothing to do with what was inside the book. And a lot of times, like Superman, a Superman comic in the early 70s would have like 3 short little stories, had no continuity whatsoever outside of the characters who were in it. And usually they were kind of silly. I mean, which was fine. I mean, just wasn't my bag of tricks. And then you would see Marvel, and the cover of the comic had something to do with what was going on in the comic. And then you had a story normally carried over into the next issue. So, and then you had, you know, relatively complex for a 12 or 13-year-old reader characters and villains. And that's what people fell in love with. So, but do that with your own role-playing games. And especially if you homebrew stuff, make sure that, you know, you're taking time to craft your villains so that they will stand out. So 10 years from now, the players who are at your table will regale other people with the story about, oh, you know, So one time we were playing Castles and Crusades, and my friend Ben was running it. And there was this character. There was this bad guy. I'll never forget. Their name was XYZ. And we had it. I'm telling you, it happens. If you take time to craft memorable NPC villains. And it's not that difficult. It's not that difficult. Steal from everything you can. We've talked about this many, many times. A good dungeon master is an intellectual thief. I haven't phrased it that way before, but that is the reality. A good game master cribs from all different things to make their game their own. So definitely, if you have memorable villains, you can get away with a lot of not so great, game mastering if your villains really do stand out. All right, so that's it for this time out. If you're watching live, thank you very much. If you watched live and took part in chat, a bigger thank you, because not only do you keep me company, you also keep each other company. But of course, I know a lot of folks out there, they don't have an opportunity to watch live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. Thank you very much for taking time out to watch any of the videos on the channel. I will be back on Tuesday, and you know what? I think I will do that as our topic. 10 fantasy role-playing games that aren't Dungeons and Dragons. And we will spend a few minutes talking about each one, and it'll have to be something that I own. So keep that in mind. Anyway, if you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already, and if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. It'll not only let you know when the Dispatch streams live Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings at 7 p.m. Central. I'll also let you know when I share other videos, such as this weekend's review of Knave 2nd Edition from author Ben Milton. Stay tuned. I will tell you what I think. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit gaminggang.com for the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, a whole lot more you're not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, evening. Have a great rest of the week and weekend. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks for watching. And I always hope you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.